Next up, we have Paul Goldschmidt, first baseman for the Arizona Diamondbacks. Goldschmidt has been a first-round pick for a number of years. He slid into the second round in some drafts last year because of the humidor at Chase Field, but he was still able to put in a solid performance after early struggles. He's eligible at first base, currently going in or he went in the two early mock drafts at an average draft position of 11. Goldie has been pretty solid in terms of his plate appearances and games played over the last couple years. As we hop into an analysis of his categories for his batting average, he's been consistently in the 290s the last 3 years. 290 last year, 297 the 2 years before that. His expected average shows a little bit of luck. In 2 of the years, some bad luck in the middle year, but last year he had a 284 expected average, so slightly worse than the 290. He's not going to be that elite, 300 plus hitter probably anymore, but he's not going to hurt you in batting average. One thing to note about Goldie is that there has been some talk that he might get traded this offseason, with the Diamondbacks maybe looking at a rebuild. So that's just one thing to remember. Chase Field used to be a great place to bat, to hit. Now it's kind of average to below average when it comes to batting, and so he may be able to get an uptick if he does move to a better situation. As you can see, one standard deviation above the mean routinely on that batting average, and that reflects a well above league average BABIP, 359 last year, 343 the year before that, and 358 the year before that. So again, very solid. The K percentage is a little bit of a concern. It jumped up 3% to 25.1% above league average. So those BABIPs are going to be really important for maintaining his batting average. His contact rate is also not great, his overall contact rate. His Z contact did go up about 2% last year to 82.3%, but not too far below league average, so not a huge concern. No major red flags. I'd call them very light yellow flags in terms of his batting average. The major issue is that K rate. If it stays up, then he's going to have to maintain a very high BABIP in order to maintain that batting average. Going over to OBP, he's always been had a stellar OBP. Goldschmidt, 389 last year, 404 and 411 the 2 years before that. Well above league average. His O swing is up a little bit over each of the last 2 years, up to 25.9, still well below league average. When we go to his rolling average graph, what we will see that is a slight concern is a real big trend line going up on that O swing towards the end of last year. Again, things like this happen. People have rough stretches, they're chasing pitches, they're forcing it when their team is struggling, like Goldie's was. So 25.9 over the course of the year, up a little bit, but still very solid. His swing rate is at 42.5%, below league average. Not surprisingly, with the uptick in O swing and some slight uptick in swing percentage, his walk rate is down about 1% to 13%, still very solid. He is more valuable, I would say, in OBP leagues than he is in average leagues, just because there's less flags. There's really no flags when it comes to OBP. He could still drop 20 points in batting average and maintain a very strong OBP. But if you drop that batting average, that would really hurt his value in traditional 5x5. From a run scoring standpoint, he seems to have gotten a little bit unlucky last year. 13.8% runs per plate appearance, well below the 2 previous years. Again, we do need to take into consideration the fact that the humidor was in effect. But those 95 runs with the OBP that he's putting up, that strikes me as low. For instance, his runs per plate appearance had a Z-score of 0.32 standard deviations above the mean, whereas his OBP was 1.7 standard deviations above the mean. So I think he got a little bit unlucky when it comes to runs last year. From a home run perspective, there's actually a lot to like here for Goldie. 33 home runs, 37.7 expected home runs. Now, he has underperformed considerably the last 2 years when it comes to expected home runs. So it may be something that XStats is not picking up. He's underperformed by over 13 expected home runs the last 2 years. So he does hit a lot of balls to the opposite field and straightaway center, and that isn't necessarily the easiest place to hit home run at Chase Field. So maybe that is some sort of factor there. His hard hit rate was at a 3-year high at 46.2%. Remember, the overall hard hit rate did go up by about 4% this past year, so not necessarily keeping up, but still up. His ground ball rate was actually low at 38.6% compared to over 46% the 2 years before that. That is a really good sign in terms of his power and extra base hits, and that may be that is a good sign for Goldie. His home run to fly ball rate was actually lower than last year, 21.6, still well above league average, but he's been able to hold steady at about that range for 3 years now. His hard hit fly ball rate did take a tumble. Last year it was 60.7, which is just incredibly elite. It's 37.5% his league average. He's at 46.4%, which is very solid. His hard hit hold fly ball rate is slightly below league average at 29.6, but he's got a ton of power, 8.3% barrels per plate appearance, a 400 average home run distance. That is down for the second consecutive year, but still above league average. He's got power to all fields. Goldie hits quite a bit of his home runs to center and the opposite field, and so that's just one thing to consider with that hard hit hold fly ball rate. Not a huge concern. No major red flags in that power profile for Goldie. RBIs, he had a 12% RBI per plate appearance, only 83 RBIs last year. That's down from 18% the year before. This is this doesn't necessarily align with the skills that we're seeing because the power is strong, the batting average is strong, so there's probably some lack of luck there. I will say the humidor coming into effect that has impacted the Arizona offense overall, and so he's probably not going to get the same type of RBI opportunities that he has in the past, and so I'm not going to anticipate that he's going to have a huge boost in RBI per plate appearance this upcoming year if he stays in Arizona. But I think above the 12%, which is below league average, is definitely something that we, I think, could expect to see. Now, stolen bases is the major area where Goldie has taken a major hit over the last couple years. 32 stolen bases 2 years ago, 18 last year, and I think 14 or so of those came in the first half last year. Only 7 this year, and for good reason. His success rate has taken a huge drop from 86.5% 2 years ago to 78.3% last year, and only 63.6% last year. That is a huge red flag when it comes to his speed. That is 9% below league average. He just really didn't run. Only 1% stolen bases per plate appearance, a Z-score below league average, and he only attempted a stolen base on 3.6% of his stolen base opportunities, down from a high of 13.1% and 9.4% last year. I think the days of seeing Goldie steal double-digit bases is over, and that is a huge blow to his value as a first baseman, as one of the few first basemen who stole bases at a real strong level. This really brings him back to the pack when we think about expectations, as does the humidor in Arizona in Chase Field. It moves it from one of the best hitting environments to at or below league average. So again, as a first baseman, without those stolen bases, you look at his profile, you look at an Anthony Rizzo profile, they're fairly similar, but Goldie's going to be going, at least in this draft, a lot higher up. I think for me, he's definitely not a first rounder heading into next year. Where exactly he slots in, I would definitely have Freddie Freeman above Goldie. I would probably even have Rizzo above Goldie, or about in the same area. And so you're looking at, maybe mid to late second rounder for me. When we look at his rolling average graphs, a lot of fluctuation last year, a lot of peaks and valleys. He ended the season on a valley in terms of his Z contact. It was down at 80%, which is about 5.5% below league average. His hard hit rate after I mean, he went through that stretch. He went through a Carpenter-like stretch where his hard hit rate over a 40 game period was at 58.4% at one period of time, which is just nuts. Finished the season, in the mid 40s, which is very solid. His ground ball rate took a dip towards the end of the year, which is really nice. But his O swing, as I mentioned, also went up. He finished the year, his O swing was a little over 32%, which is worse than league average. So not necessarily a good sign. One of the highest 40-game rates for an increased O swing for Goldschmidt. It actually looks like over the last 3 years, that is the highest 40-game rate. So that's a little bit of a concern for Goldie, especially with the Z contact going on. So some slight yellow flags in Goldschmidt's profile. As I mentioned before, I think the biggest thing for him is that he really is hurt by the addition of the humidor and by the lack of stolen bases. It makes him fall back a little ways. And, I think where he's going, I think there's going to be people who still see him as a first-round draft pick, as we've seen in the 2 early mock drafts. And I think that's going to be a mistake heading into next year. There's enough kind of little yellow flags there on the batting average, big red flag there on the stolen bases ever returning to their previous levels. So I really see Goldie as not the special type of player that he used to be, and more, one of these, not just a guy. He's still very, very solid, but he's lacking the production in key areas to make him a first-round draft pick and even a second-round draft pick. You look at guys who are up and coming like a Eugenio Suarez, who's probably going to have a fairly similar profile and who's going to be going later in drafts. So that has been Paul Goldschmidt, first baseman for the Arizona Diamondbacks.